Hands up who has used Meteor. Hands up who has not used Meteor and is curious. That's good. Mostly Meteor savvy. Has anyone got Meteor in production? So. Ah, a squad in the corner. Full-on Apollo t-shirts. This man is familiar to me.
Yeah.
Your face.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I'm working at Meteor.
You work on Meteor? Yes! Still got it. I can spot them. They've got a smell. Would you be interested in doing a lightning talk?
Yeah, I can do Q&A.
Amazing. Yeah, first. I'm on screen. This is great. Okay. It's the Meteor news. It's been a little while since we had a meetup. The last one was at the end of June, so there's some catching up to do. Previously on Meteor, as of the 30th of June, the roadmap was, let's get MongoDB 3.2 support, let's get Node 4.4 support. Back then we were still rocking 0.10, which is pretty antiquated now, and further NPM integrations. This is straight from the roadmap.md file in the GitHub repo for Meteor/Meteor. If you want to know what they are focusing on next, the roadmap.md file is a really good source of information. So, since then, somewhat uninteresting point, but on the issue of further NPM integration, in Meteor 1.3.5, so we're now on 4.2, 4.2.1. Back in 1.3.5, there was a small note in the history.md file that says, be sure to include a package JSON in your new Meteor projects as of 1.3.5. Basically everything, if you don't have one, everything in your node modules will be bundled up in your production bundle, because it has no other clues to go on. So if you install a dev dependency, some kind of build tool, if you will, then you should aim to include a package JSON that lists that as a dev dependency so that the bundler can know not to send that to your clients, because you probably don't want to send the less compiler, the less CLI to a mobile phone who just wants to check your website. And that's new. So NPM support is now gone so far that you really should include a package JSON in all new projects because it's now being used for build time hints. It was a small point, but I think it's important to know. That is the minor release klaxon. Obviously, Meteor practices romantic versioning like the rest of us, so 1.4 is actually a fairly significant release. There were some interesting changes that went in. Most notably, some of the dependencies incremented their major numbers. And as we know, major number increases is basically a PR stunt. But you know, it's also interesting. It means lots of things may have changed and you need to go and test all your code. So, notably, Node is now 4.5, and I would expect that that will change very soon, given that there was a bunch of flaws in SSL discovered recently that have led to security updates to Node, so I'd imagine Meteor will be deploying updates to those dependencies fairly soon. But yeah, we've got Node 4, which is a huge leap forward, and Node 4 has long-term support from the Node Foundation, and so we can safely say that we are now writing our code in a sensible way, because we're building on a platform that now has a long-term support strategy. That is such a weird sentence to say for someone who started the Meteor meter 3 years ago when we were on like 0.4. And everything was fresh and new. Also, in the latest and greatest Meteor is Mongo 3.2 support. This is a big change. In practice, it doesn't mean much, but actually, there's an interesting change under the hood, which isn't discussed quite enough. Wiredtiger, the database storage engine, is that guy. So by default, if you create a new MongoDB database today on 3.2, it's going to use Wiredtiger as the storage engine. This is interesting if you follow the chain up. So previously, Mongo didn't support swapping out different storage engines, and this is just the chunks of code that take your request to store documents and decide how best to put it on disk and how best to return it when you make a query. So now you can plug in different storage engines, and the default has changed, and it's changed in some interesting ways. So I didn't realize this, but Wiredtiger supports document-level concurrency control from their own marketing hyperbole. which is interesting because the old storage format, the old storage engine, didn't support document level concurrency control. It supported collection level concurrency control. So that means if multiple people try to write to the same collection, there's a lock being passed around at the collection level, even if you're writing to different documents. Interesting. I didn't know that. So obviously Wiredtiger is going to be significantly faster for a write-heavy application where multiple people might be writing to the same collection but different documents, which, given the way that we tend to use collections, and I think the way lots of people use collections, you sort of expect lots of people to be able to write to the same collection if they're writing to different documents. I think that's kind of what people, that was certainly my default set of assumptions about how collections would work. So now reality is drifting towards what I thought reality was. So great. The dream becomes reality. So this will be faster for writes, but obviously you need to take any kind of performance improvement quotes. It says things like 7 to 10 times faster. I think that's a big claim. 7x, 10x. You need to evaluate it for the workloads that your application is generating. Always evaluate these things. Other changes under the hood. So Mongo now supports compression. Compression at the native level, so as you write data to Mongo, it will compress it for you before it stores it to disk. And it's now on by default, and it's configurable per collection, and it's going to use it uses Snappy by default, but you can choose zlib, and I assume others in the future, but Snappy is a good choice because it's a nice trade-off between CPU intensity and storage space saved. It's good for kind of, I just want to write a lot of data efficiently. And they say, in the hyperbole, could be up to 80% smaller on disk, depending on the structure of your data. It's a big number. It is worth noting it's not all pros. Every change has a cost. Wiredtiger does, in order to get the space-saving gains in storage, and in order to get the improvements to locking efficiency and writing, it's just an entirely new engine. It's a heavier burden on CPU and RAM. I know this because I went to look at Compose.io's website to see how much they would charge me for a new Wiredtiger Mongo, and they don't enable Wiredtiger by default because they have not used it for long enough to feel confident that they know how to manage it in production. They will let you, if you're determined to use Wiredtiger, you can use it on Compose. But they have a minimum amount of RAM that you're allowed to get with them before they will let you use Wiredtiger, because they've spotted that the RAM increase is significant, but the gains are true, but the cost is in your RAM. So it's worth noting. Last month when I did the news, I glibly questioned the sanity of nested imports, which is a new feature that came along in 1.3 Meteor. It's not something that vanilla Node supports. And in my emotional reaction when I saw it in the docs was, I thought the whole point of import statements in JavaScript was to make the programs more statically inspectable, so that tooling could know more concretely what your dependency tree was. And nested imports, certainly if you nest them inside conditionals, for example, makes that a lot harder to reason about without running your code. So this is, for me, there's a whole universe of pain and interesting discussion around the import statement in JavaScript versus require Node, the front end. And now Meteor's kind of got its own slight take on it. And I was a bit dismissive, so I did a bit more research. And it's quite interesting. So, yeah. 1.3.3 Meteor introduced flexible import usage, and now in 1.4 you can also flexibly import in packages. That's interesting. And so the way it does this is it uses a package from NPM called Reify. And the goal of Reify, which it claims to achieve, is to enable ECMAScript 2015 modules in any version of Node.js. So it's a complete userland solution to the thorny issue of getting Node to deal with imports. I strongly recommend you take a look at if you are interested in the ongoing debate, which at times is civil, about how to deal with imports in Node, then Reify is a really interesting solution. And also Ben's taken it all the way. He's written a big long kind of summary of why he did this, because a lot of people kind of went, like me, just looked at the headline and went, what the hell, we don't need more pain. But it's an interesting proposal. So the case for nested import declarations is on GitHub, on benjam.n/Reify. And I recommend you all read it. It's too long to go into in a news article that's already too long. Further reading for the group, read it, tell me what you think. It's a community challenge. Apollo. I'm pretty sure next month this is going to be called the London Apollo meetup. Apollo is really exciting. Meteor obviously is doing its job well because it's not as exciting anymore. It's a workhorse. It works, it's in production. There's no danger of things blowing up in your face anymore. Where's the fun in that? So Apollo, there's the new shiny. Here's the bag of razor blades to give to the children. Yes! So you step in at any point.
Whenever you tell me.
Okay. Apollo. I feel really. I'm going to talk about Apollo when an expert is in the room. If you haven't heard of GraphQL, you will. It's such a big deal now that there's a conference about it, but there's conferences about everything. So hey, what is GraphQL? What is Apollo? GraphQL is like a reaction to the folklore that has built up around REST. Because REST now, everyone's got a flipping opinion on how to do REST and what the original intentions of Tim Berners-Lee were, and acronyms like HEOS and all sorts of boggling things. And everyone actually just has a job to do and they want to put some data on the screen and they don't want to have to refactor 10,000 endpoints when a new property is, or there's a cross-cutting concern. Just things like that are really difficult in REST. GraphQL is a bit more back to the old ways of remote procedure calling, but it's nothing like that. It's like a data cable between you and the client. You get a way of declaratively defining all of the data types that your back end and your back ends, because it can be multiple. It's an aggregation as well. So you can kind of say that across all of the data sources that my server side has, so it could be like the Twitter API over here, and it could be like your database there, and it could be some third-party thing here. Here's the types that I'm going to make available to you, declare, and then there's code generation at work to build out a client for that. Then client side, the same process goes. So you can build up a tree, an arbitrary sub-tree of all the data available, and you can say, my view layer, in order to render this widget, I'm going to need the first 50 comments, and I want the author field to be populated with their nickname and their number of likes as well, but I don't want the rest of the author object. So I just define very statically, almost JSON-like tree of give me all the comments, and for each comment, fill out the author name and nickname and likes. And you, the server, I don't care how you figure that out, you go figure it out. And then respond to me with the data that I've asked for. And that's what GraphQL does. And so there's lots of work coming out of the Meteor group to take the ideas in GraphQL and give them the Meteor polish where we expect things like live data. So we expect to see multiple clients updating in real time when data changes here, I want to see it change there. And we've got used to that. So that's not an idea baked in by default with GraphQL. So they're looking at subscriptions. This guy, with a lightning talk. I'll get to the end of this nonsense. You do a lightning talk. It'll be sweet. Live data stuff. So the news for Apollo, if you've been following it, I think one of the most interesting things coming up, and what they said in the Slack today, I was like, what's the Apollo news? And someone said, well, Apollo subscriptions are pretty new. He said, is live data dead? Apollo has subscriptions, it's the new way. So Apollo subscriptions is the Apollo way of doing live data, live updates. It's pub sub style under the hood. And it's worth checking out. That is the state of the art of Apollo. This man knows more. If you're interested in Apollo, go to the Apollo Stack website, read the medium.com Apollo Stack blog, and take a look at the example apps in docs. Community. The source of this news has come from places such as Crater.io, very good. Meteor Weekly, also very useful. and the Transmission podcast. That is super useful because they get direct access to core devs and they ask some interesting questions and they wrestle with them in an hour-long form if you need some time to spare, but they tend to get to the heart of some of the interesting issues and talk about things in a very reasonable way. Well, if you just read the forums, you'll go mad. So don't read the forums too much, or inject some civility into the forums, or just listen to the Transmission podcast. It's very good. And of course, History MD, and you contact us. Tell us how you're getting on with Apollo. Come and do some writing talks. Otherwise, you have to listen to me talk too much. La-di-da. Get in touch. That's all.